Well, I want to ask you a bunch of questions, but let's start with this new book that you've had published, and it's starting to gain some notoriety here. It's called Getting America Back to Work. Again, in a nutshell, what's it about, and what message are you trying to convey to not only unionists across the United States, but working people?
Well, it starts with an analysis of the last 30 years of our economy and how all the money has gone to the top. That for 20 years we had stagnant wages. For the last 10 years we've had declining wages. That the value of our paychecks are less today than in 1973. That the average CEO in 1980 made 40 times as much as the average worker. Today the average CEO makes between 400 and 500 times as much as the average worker. And that has starved the middle class, and it has frozen consumer demand. And the reason we can't get out of this economic recession, the worst we've had in 70 years, is there's no consumer demand because people don't make enough money anymore to buy things, to drive the great American economic engine. And so we call for basically four things. Organizing on a much larger scale so that we can win power back as collective power as working people. And then three policies that will put more money in the pockets of workers. One, the Employee Free Choice Act, to give workers the freedom to form unions and bargain collectively so that workers don't have to be afraid to form a union. Two, greening the economy, converting to a green economy, which would create 2 million good-paying new jobs. And then three, rebuilding our manufacturing base. Because the way you create wealth, and every economist will tell you this, is by making things that other people want to buy. Well, we don't do that enough anymore. And so to be able to create wealth in this country, in this economy, we need to rebuild our industrial sector.
Well, let's talk about that. Free trade has really killed the United States manufacturing. How can that be turned around?
Well, it's not that difficult. I mean, it has killed manufacturing in this country. We need to make sure that in every trade agreement that we include labor rights, labor agreements, minimum wages, so that workers everywhere are benefited by trade. One of the saddest things about NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, was within 5 years after NAFTA passed, manufacturing wages in Mexico had dropped 10%. So the free trade only benefits the elites in this country and the other countries. And we've got to have trade that's based on lifting people up and not forcing them down.
Are you seeing more other than union, let me say, workers beginning to grasp this message and get involved?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you know, you have all over the country, you have worker centers popping up all over the country. You have more and more peace and justice committees of people of faith, more and more solidarity committees around the country. I think people are beginning to learn that corporate America, we can't trust the future of the country to corporate America. They have ruined our economy. They gambled with Wall Street and lost $2 trillion of our wealth and $50 trillion of the world's wealth. And leaving corporate America to their own devices created this huge hole in the Gulf of Mexico, which not only has destroyed an ecosystem, but has destroyed an entire economy for an entire region of the United States.
You've been in this a long time. Are you amazed by the high level of corporate greed that we've seen over the last couple of years?
Yes, I am. I'm continually amazed by the arrogance and the greed of corporate America, or what we call in the book the financial elite. It astounds me that Goldman Sachs and the others on Wall Street could lose $2 trillion of this country's wealth, go to the government and say, we're too big to fail, go to George Bush essentially, you got to bail us out. And the government gives them almost $800 billion, and within a month, they gave the same guys who screwed it up the largest bonuses in history. So yeah, the greed and arrogance of corporate America is astounding.
Are you surprised, Stewart, that there hasn't been more of a backlash from working people across the United States? It doesn't matter if you're a union or not, especially what we saw with the Republicans not supporting unemployment benefits and the rigmarole, the 7 weeks that were lost in that cycle.
Yes, I am. I mean, but there is a backlash building, and people are beginning to finally figure out that we can't trust America our kids and grandkids and the future of this country to the people who are ripping us off, which is corporate America.
I would believe that one of the major mechanisms to turn this thing around would be employee-free choice. For those that don't know, please give us a generic description and let us know, with your estimation, where does this all stand nationally?
Well, basically, workers in America have lost the freedom to form unions and bargain collectively. Workers who try to form unions are routinely fired and otherwise discriminated against. There's tons of research on this, including from the National Labor Relations Board. So the Employee Free Choice Act would do three simple things. One is it would provide real penalties on employers who violate the law, because currently the only federal law I'm aware of with no penalties for its violation is the National Labor Relations Act. So real penalties on employers who violate the law. Two, if workers form a union, then the employer has to bargain in good faith. And if they can't come to a contract within 4 months, then the workers can seek arbitration and have a binding arbitration. And three, it says if your signature is good enough to get you sent to Iraq or Afghanistan, it ought to be good enough to get you a union. And so workers can form a union simply by signing a card or a petition, and when 50% plus one sign up, then a union is established. We have an overwhelming majority of support in the House. 3 years ago now, we passed it in the House of Representatives, 241 to 185. We have a majority in the Senate supporting the Employee Free Choice Act. We have a president who is anxious to sign it, a vice president who has spoken about it repeatedly. We're stuck right now at the filibuster rule in the Senate. So I'm convinced that we will find a way around it, but it makes it, these elections in 2010 are very, very, very important. And now is not the time for progressives and trade unionists to get discouraged or to feel defeated. And now is the time to turn on the gas and run hard in these elections in 2010 and build a stronger majority in the House and the Senate, which I think is possible. Mm-hmm. I mean, the Republicans, they held up unemployment, as you mentioned. They tried to kill health care reform. They tried to kill financial services reform. They're standing in the way of the Employee Free Choice Act. They're threatening Social Security. They're threatening Medicare and Medicaid. They want to raise, they'll even tell you this, they want to raise Social Security to 70 years so that a guy like me will never get it. I don't expect to see 70.
Well, you're not 70, are you?
No, but I don't expect to see it either. So the people at this picnic today outside of Buffalo, and the good people of Buffalo, are an example of what's going to happen around the country when we turn up the heat in these elections and we move the country forward instead of backwards.
Well, if you had a crystal ball and you were able to look into it, what would you think you'd see in terms of employee-free choice? Is there a timeline?
No, there's not a timeline. To be perfectly honest, Tom, when we created the Employee Free Choice Act 6 years ago, I thought it would be a 15, 20-year campaign. I've been pleased I thought the timeline for the Employee Free Choice Act and the campaign for the Employee Free Choice Act would be analogous to the struggle for civil rights. But it's moved a lot faster and a lot quicker. And so as soon as we break the deadlock in the Senate, either by changing the rules, which could well happen, only takes a majority vote to do away with the filibuster rule, that bill will move and it'll be passed and it'll be signed.
Somebody mentions the word union. What would you like them to think when they hear that word?
We built the middle class. We created the American dream. We are the only institution in America standing up for working families day in and day out. We're on your side. We're on America's side. We're the patriots. We're the ones who sends our kids and daughters and sons to fight the country's wars. We're the ones who create the wealth that made this country the richest country in the history of the world. We're the ones who built the country, then we built the middle class.